For all those who appreciate the work that we're doing here on Standing for Truth, please hit that subscribe button because we are just getting started.
They have an evolutionary creation model, which makes no sense. No, in creation, God can front load the genome with as much diversity as he wants to. If all variation is caused by mutation, absolutely, it's impossible. You can't get all the variation we see in modern people if we start from Adam and Eve, if they're 100% homozygous.
Right.
But what if God front-loaded Adam and Eve with like 20 million variants? Then we can lose half of them and still have as much as we have today. And 20 million is not a lot. I carry 3 or 4 million. You carry 3 or 4 million of the common ones, and probably 3 or 4 million rare ones. That's fine. So it's actually trivial to start with Adam and Eve and get the people we have today as far as the number of variants. Especially if you add 6,000 years of mutation, you can have a lot of new variants appearing in that 6,000 years.
Right. They're coming from their perspective of the evolution having to work in a short time period.
Yeah.
Well, so what is some of the best evidences for a literal Eve and a literal Adam?
Well, the best evidences are the fact that we found Y chromosome Adam and mitochondrial Eve. Now, the evolutionists puts them in a different place where I would put them, but it's quite clear there's only one human Y chromosome. And all men share a very similar Y chromosome. That didn't have to be true, because if we came from a common ancestral population with chimpanzees, that ancestral population would have had a diversity of Y chromosomes. And when the population split into the lineages that led to humans and chimps, it's possible that we could have, like, in this ancestral population type A, B, C, and D. Well, if humans have type A and B, and chimpanzees had type B and C, that means there would be a human and chimp who both had type B. They're more closely related to each other than a human is to another human on the Y chromosome. But it didn't work out that way. It's, mathematically and theoretically possible, but it's totally not true. There's only one Y chromosome. In fact, just yesterday, or maybe the day before, they redid the Neanderthal Y chromosome, which is really weird to me, because for a long time we only had female ancient DNA. All the Neanderthals, all the Denisovans, as they're sequencing them, they're all female. Like, why is no males? We got like 20 females and no males. Something really weird. But they finally published a partial Neanderthal Y chromosome several years ago, and it was way different. I mean, way out in left field. Like, oh wow, that thing's really different. Well, just a couple of days ago, they replaced it with a very modern human one.
Wow.
And the Y chromosome common ancestor between Neanderthals and humans, modern humans, is much more recent than it was last week. They totally redated it.
Incredible. Wow. Where can we find that study? I want that one. But so how about molecular clocks then? Do they support a literal Adam and Eve? And is there a constant clock? Is there an average clock that can actually be made?
Yes and no.
Okay.
If you take a constant average for things we can measure in the laboratory today, you can get an approximation of how long ago Y chromosome Adam or mitochondrial Eve lived. And it's only a few thousand years. You don't need tens or even hundreds of thousands of years. Now, they don't like doing that. So they're like, the Y chromosome right now, the clock is grounded in the time when Native Americans got to North America. Okay. In fact, the Y chromosome guys, they call that a sanity check that appears in several papers. So they're not using genetics, they're using archaeology to give them a clock so they can figure out how far long ago mitochondrial Adam was, Y chromosome Adam was.
Got it.
Wow, that's interesting. But if you look at the measurable mutation rate from one generation to the next, it's a lot faster than they want it to be. But I don't like the molecular clock idea. I don't think it works. If you look at a Y chromosome family tree and you look at people that are closer related, maybe in the same group, well, some of those people could have twice as many mutations as their cousin or relative that came from the same founder of that group. So like group R1b, I'm an R1b, 80% of Western Europeans are R1b. If you look at the R1b founder and then you measure the branch lengths of all the individuals that are R1b, there are people twice as many mutations as, wait a minute, that means there's no clock. That means you can't put your finger on the tree and know how long it took for these many mutations to accumulate. And yet, if you just do a rough approximation, everything is young. There's another issue. I wrote an article called Patriarchal Drive. I published it in the Journal of Creation, did some computer modeling. I said, we kind of know that the older a father is, the more mutations he passes on to his children. And I said, but if Noah was over 500 years old when he had Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and that population was reduced to 6 people, that means those 3 sons, their father was over 500 years old when they were born. That means they each got a huge dose of mutations. And as that post-flood population starts growing, these really old men are going to continue to have children. And the older they get, the more mutations their children are going to have. I call it patriarchal drive. And what it does is it totally messes up the average. It takes, some kids are being born in this population with 800 mutations, and some kids are being born to a young father and they only have 10 mutations. So you can't look at the branch length on the tree and know that the branch length equals time. It does settle down after a while when now, men today aren't having children when we're 500-600 years old. We tend to have children when we're 30 years old. That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So there are problems with molecular clock archaeologically, genetically, philosophically, mathematically. Yeah, we can still use it if we want to.
Okay.